We are all somewhat excited for this episode, and we'll get into it, but it is another exciting day of the 2026 FIFA World Cup to recap matches. Excitement because it is the FIFA World Cup, but not necessarily because of the results that we've had on the matches in the last couple of days, but we'll get right into it. Welcome to everyone watching or listening around the world. I'm Spencer Thompson alongside Drew Williamson. We got a special guest joining us here to help us with the first two matches that happened yesterday. And Kai Dombach, proud to be with you all virtually in various parts of the United States. First and foremost, here's the thing. I was at Santa Clara. We'll get into that. Well, actually, we already talked about that matchup in the last episode. So I was in Santa Clara, bolted over to Sacramento to go visit some friends since I was in the area. Had a day in between matches. Spent a day. That's part of the reason we didn't have the podcast side, because I was enjoying pool day in 104-degree weather, which, by the way, fortunately, the pool that we were at, the folks were really smart about it, and they built covers over the pool. So they were like high up on the ceiling and such. So I still put on sunscreen. Kids, adults, whoever, put on sunscreen no matter what. And then got over to Sacramento, flew up here to Seattle. And flights got delayed, didn't get to the place I'm staying at right now until about 2 in the morning. Had to finish an article, 4 hours of sleep, so we're all doing well. There's some caffeine to my right. All that to say, this is normal stuff at sports media, and we would not have it any other way as long as we get to calls, either broadcast, podcast, write articles, be in so many great spaces and everything. But all that to be said, that's why we didn't have an episode yesterday, and that's why we have 8 exciting matches to catch for you. But first off, Kai is a great friend of mine. We have met at several of the National Sports Media Association conventions over the years. We're actually going to reunite again in a couple of weeks since we'll be out there. And one of those guys who's got a lot of interesting stories. If we had the time to delve into that, we certainly would. But, Kai, appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to talking German soccer with you. I feel like we've always had these sort of like mini conversations about soccer and stuff that's going on leading to the World Cup and other things you're doing, but we haven't had a chance to actually get deep in the weeds in this sort of podcast format. So I'm really excited. Hopefully you are, but we'll see how it goes.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I wish that we had all the time in the world so that way I could talk about all the history of the German game, and how it became a big thing. And then, they won 4 championships, maybe a 5th. We'll see, but that's way down the road. But, I'm happy to be here.
Oh, for sure. We're happy to have you here. And let's just get right into it. Match number 9, that was yesterday. Philadelphia's debut for the World Cup, which is actually the stadium that I'm sure Kai was a little disappointed when you learned that Germany would not be playing at least one of their matches there. Not the opener, at least, but I know they'll find some way to bounce over there eventually. But this was a Group E commencement in the 2026 FIFA World Cup between Ivory Coast and Ecuador. And look, as I was started out on the top of the podcast, there were a lot of matches that were very disappointing in what they were supposed to be blockbuster matches. But I tell you, this is amazing. Like, verbatim, I think I said this on one of the previous episodes. I was a part of the media call with John Strong and Stu Holden ahead of this World Cup. And I believe it was John who said, the question was asked by one of the members there, who are your dark horses? Who do you think is going to shake some chaos into the World Cup? And Ecuador was named on the list. Well, remember what happened last World Cup when Argentina won it all? They lost their opening match to Saudi Arabia. So I'm not saying that that's the case here. But right now, this is where the alarm is sounding for Ecuador, because especially because the majority of the match was so defensive. You wait until the 90th minute for Amad Diallo to score for Ivory Coast. But, I mean, we talked about this, Drew, for Ivory Coast is, and this is the third time that, I beg your pardon, previously it was 3 times that they were in the World Cup where they were third in their group stage. But now this is the fourth time they've been here. They were unbeaten in their qualifiers, and they just had their momentum build. Like the fact that especially Ecuador, like, just I know we talked about them as well of the kind of 3-point paperwork penalty they had getting to this World Cup and the challenges they had, but I got to be honest with you, especially with all the amount of ties that we're going to get into in these recaps, this is not a match that I at all anticipated was going to be a tie.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was an amazing match. I mean, most soccer fans, that really do appreciate, 0-0 and 1-0 games. This didn't really feel like a 0-0, 1-0 game. Both teams created lots of chances. Obviously, we talked about this last episode, Spencer, but Ecuador has one of the best defenses in this entire tournament. And they show that. They were stout for 90 minutes. And even on Ivory Coast's game winner, that was on a counterattack. And it was a lovely left-footed finish into the bottom left corner. So you got to give credit. Ivory Coast is one of those teams I talked about last episode. I just respect them so much. They play with this integrity and they play together. I love seeing the coaches' reaction to when they scored that late winner, their fan base. It was great because I did notice that, like, I feel like 90% of that stadium was Ecuador fans. I could be wrong, but I felt like it was a big majority of Ecuador. But glad Ivory Coast got the win. It was a great game, and like we said, I think those were the second and third best teams in that group, and it was huge for Ivory Coast to get 3 points there.
Kai, I know you're from a perspective of more focused on the German team, but certainly paying attention to the rest of this World Cup. When you think about how Ivory Coast, in their qualifiers, did not concede a single goal in 10 games, completely unbeaten on that campaign, and now they keep that same trend forward where they haven't conceded a goal in this World Cup. Is this a team that you think is very dangerous heading into the rest of group play?
I'm not entirely sure about that. It was still, just a very, very intense match. Both teams going at it one after another, bing, bang, boom. And really, the thing that everybody really needed to check on was the woodwork, because how many times did Ecuador smack the crossbar? Like 1, 2, 3 times in that match?
Yeah.
So Ivory Coast was absolutely beaten a few times. They were just incredibly fortunate that the goals weren't, a couple inches further, higher and wider. Otherwise, it would have been a very different game. So I'm not entirely convinced that Ivory Coast is going to be kind of like the team to beat, but they're absolutely going to be they're definitely going to be a much stronger opponent to Germany than Curaçao.
One thing that definitely I was saying about the sounding the alarm thing. Yes, Ecuador hit the post several times. Yes, it could have easily been a 3-0 game had they get a lucker bounce. But when was the last time you saw a captain swapped out in a competition? The fact that Valencia was pulled around, the man who's leading this Ecuador national team in goals that have been scored in 49, and for him to be pulled. Now, what was it, the 77th minute that late, and for him to be, swapped out, it's a concern, at least on my end. I don't know how you feel, Drew, but I think with the struggles they had to finally find the back of the net, for him to come out in the 77th minute, I think that's a bit concerning.
Absolutely, and especially I think when you bring up the age factor there, because Inter Valencia is getting up there. This will most likely be his last World Cup. When you think of Ecuador football, you think of Inter Valencia. So, it takes a lot for them to, pull him out of a game, especially when it's still 0-0 at that point. But I think that's just the age factor kicking in there. Obviously, we know the kind of talent Valencia has, and we know how easily he can put the ball in the back of the net. He almost did it a few times in the match, but yeah, no, it's definitely raising a little bit of concern.
And I know we're going to get into the Tunisia matchup and talk about some other things as we go forward with this, but but usually around this World Cup, in the past, when there are poor performances in the group stage, I mean, now I will say the 1-0 loss, I think, is a little more of a leeway. But but this is where you start getting concerned if you are in the head coaching position, and especially if you're head coach Sebastian. And this is where you have to not only step up but find a way to get the best out of your guys. But this is I don't know how you feel about it, Kai, but if I were the head coach right now for Ecuador, I would be concerned for my job right now.
Yeah, this is not a good position to be in if you're Ecuador. You're really, really expected to be doing a lot better than this. Now, one of the fortunate things, for this World Cup is, if you're one of the best teams, you don't even have to be one of the absolute best teams in third place in order to make it to the next round. So that could really help them out in this case,
Yep.
if they do manage to finish in third place, which I would expect because, Curaçao viewed wonderful story, how they came here, scored a goal against Germany, made it 1-1, but let's just get real here. Probably not going to get into the top three, as sweet and lovely a country and people and fans as they are. They're probably not going to be in the top three. So Ecuador can really, really be, be very thankful about the new setup for this year's World Cup. Like that's really their saving grace right now.
Absolutely. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of having 8 out of the 12, get 3 teams in is, it makes the group stage like more exciting, but it also makes it, less stressful for teams just like Ecuador that probably were expected to beat Ivory Coast, but, now realize, all right, well, now we turn our attentions to Curaçao. So,
Yeah, I agree about especially the third place situation is good, and yes, we'll get into it about this matchup in terms of Curacao making their first World Cup goal. But yeah, if I'm Ecuador, there's at least that sort of solace, and it also it does benefit him that right now Curacao is at a -6 goal differential, especially on those tiebreakers. That really helps them in terms of the third place side, but you also have the challenge of trying to figure out where the other third place teams are. Like, what is their goal differential in the matches that they've lost? How is that stuff playing out? But obviously it's day one for their group play, so plenty of time to work through that, plenty of time to situate it. But I'm sure that is going to be talked about in the locker room in some capacity with their next matchups, and the sentiment of we need to score goals, we need to score them fast, and the back line needs to stay strong. But congratulations to the Ivory Coast. And one more thing. We did not mention him, especially because there were a lot of players on the squad that were there were no domestic league players on this Ivory Coast squad. Amad Diallo, tremendous job for him to score that goal in the 90th minute. I mean, and you mentioned it as well on the counterattack, Drew. I mean, especially when we were talking about Frankie Kessié and Yan Diomande, about how they were good players and were looking like they were going to be the stars of this. A lot of other media folks focusing on this team, they were also microscoping on those players and talking about how these were going to be the stars. And that's another one of those beauties of the World Cup where it doesn't matter how much media attention you get going in. It's a matter of how you show out on the pitch when the tournament time comes.
absolutely. I want to say one thing about Diamande. He is one of the fastest guys I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh yeah.
He was flying on that wing. I mean, he went past his defender so many times and just it literally wouldn't even really do that much besides just like blow right past him with his speed. So yeah, no, one of the fastest guys I've ever seen.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And Germany and Ivory Coast will face off in Toronto on the 20th of June, which that should be an interesting environment, especially for them to go up to Canada. And then Ecuador and Curacao will collide in Kansas City on that same day. All right, the one-sided victory. I don't want to insult Curaçao here. It's an understatement to say one-sided, but it was a 7-1 victory at the end of the match in Houston for not only that venue's debut at the World Cup, but for Group E play to also get its conclusion in there. And in front of 68,021 fans, Germany made a statement in the group stage of that they're here to win. They're here to try and run the table, or at least get to the top of their group, and trying to show why they're the 10th best ranked team in the world on the Coca-Cola FIFA rankings. And Kai, I'll start with you on this. I mean, as you know, it's been a struggle for this German national team since the 2014 incredible run where they ran the table and won it all. They really have not been able to get things going in Russia or Qatar in the last couple of World Cups. But, I mean, what really stands out to me is that they had 6 unique goal scorers in this victory. You had Kai Verdes. I'm probably butchering that name. I apologize, but he
Don't worry,
scored
it's okay.
in 45 plus 5, and then at the 88-minute mark had 2 goals. So that it not only shows, and it's kind of. It reminds me a little bit of this 2014 team very early on, but reminds me where they had a lot of different options, different goal scorers they could go to, and different weapons in the right places. But to me, I'm really excited to see how this German national team goes in the rest of the tournament, and if the rest of these players can continue to be involved.
Mm-hmm. So the issue that Germany had in 2018 and 2022 was that they completely underestimated their first opponents. In 2018, it was Mexico, and they just completely, thought, well, we're Germany. We just won the World Cup, 4 years ago. We can do this again. It's no problem. Even though they had a lot of their main engine room completely gone from 2014 to 2018 because you won the World Cup. That's how you retire after that. That's amazing. So they didn't have Philipp Lahm, they didn't have Schweinsteiger, they didn't have Podolski, they didn't have Klose, they didn't have so many members that were so critical to that 2014 run. And in 2018, it was just a collection of individuals that just happened to wear the same shirt. They didn't look like they were the same team. They weren't really on the same team. A lot of yelling at each other, a lot of, bickering in the locker room afterwards. And then when, the press said, hey, there's bickering going on, it's like, oh no, that's not true. That's not true. They would go out on social media and say, don't believe the media. Don't believe them. That's not true. And then it all just came flooding out that there was a whole lot of bickering at the 2018 World Cup. And then in 2022, under Hans-Dieter Flick, they just did not mesh with the coach. Like, you could watch this one scene in the documentary that followed them on Amazon Prime. I mean, it's in German, so sorry I can't
Subtitles
help you out there. But I mean, ich kann das verstehen, aber ich kann nicht alles
Gesundheit
für euch auf English. So yeah, it's all in German, but basically what the thing is, like, after their first game against Japan, they all come in for a meeting, and Hans-Dieter Flick just unloads on them because they were late to the meeting, and the players just kind of looked at him just like he was a substitute teacher, going off on them and just going like, why are you yelling at us? I mean, what are you mad about? He had zero control over the locker room. But in 2026, they now have a proper head coach in Julian Nagelsmann, and he is a coaching prodigy. And he moved up the ranks in the Bundesliga, started at Hoffenheim when he was in his late 20s, and took them from mid-table into European competition at the end of the 2015-16 season. Then he also took over at Leipzig, and then at Bayern, and now at Germany, and everybody knows him. There's been a little bit concern with Undav, with the relationship between those two, but outside of that, it's just been phenomenal since Nagelsmann took over Germany, and he has been a workhorse in the locker room, and everybody respects him, everybody knows him, and it looks like the relationship with Undav and Nagelsmann has really, cooled off, and it's like, they've come together, they're working together, and everybody is working together on the same team. It's not a collection of individuals, it is a team, and I think that they've really earned their nickname again, auf Deutsch, which is Die Mannschaft, or just simply the team. And I think they've really earned that name again after what happened with Curaçao. Now, they did still underestimate them for a little bit.
Yep.
After 30 minutes, it was 1-1, and a lot of people were looking at their pitchforks going, we might need this again. But when there were 2 more goals for Germany before halftime, everybody kind of put the pitchforks away, and then they pulled off another 7-1. Definitely not the same 7-1 as what happened against Brazil in 2014. Yeah. Not the same at all. No way at all. But the Brazilians definitely noticed the 7-1 score line. They definitely did. But so yeah, Germany is feeling a lot more confident now and looking pretty good. I mean, this was the perfect opponent for them to face in their first match, and now They look like they're ready to roll. I'm not convinced that they'll make it to the final yet, but if they can get some good results against Ivory Coast, Ecuador, then you can absolutely, make change my mind.
I think you just illustrated perfectly how difficult it is for a team to repeat in a World Cup setting, because I mean obviously Germany was so dominant in 2014 and then have had international struggles leading up to this World Cup. But I think you highlighted it perfectly. They're playing with more chemistry than in past World Cups, just basing off one match. And obviously you said the new head coach is great and he makes them play as a team, and I love that. And you could tell in this game, Germany set the tone early. Obviously, the goal, that credit to Curaçao for equalizing on a little counterattack just over the outstretched hands of Manuel Neuer. Cannot believe I'm saying his name in 2026.
Yeah.
That guy
Yes.
won't go away. I mean, he's what, I think he's 41 now. Just crazy. Came out of international retirement, everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I love that Germany didn't stop after halftime when when the score was 3-1. I love that, just keep your foot on the opponent's necks. I love that they set the tone, scoring 7 goals. That just bleeds confidence throughout the whole team. And you could tell this Germany team is playing with more chemistry and playing more together, and it's just less selfishness out there.
Yeah. And I just from my personal perspective, I think that they were playing at about 75-80% speed. They weren't going all out.
Yeah.
Like they were basically kind of walking around the 18 a lot. And but they were doing it like in the second half. It was a bit more respectful, just going, it's like, look, this is our first match. We do need to think about the goal differential, but we shouldn't completely ruin them. We shouldn't completely ruin their first experience of the World Cup. That's not right. And leave it to the Germans to complain about a 7-1 result, because there are a few things that made Germans go, I don't like this. We need it to be better. So the big one being, in my personal opinion, there were 2 things. Like Sané wasn't completely on time and on target all the time, and and also in my opinion, Manuel Neuer getting selected. He was a bit late on the reaction to that Curaçao goal, and Hoffmann would have stopped that shot. Neuer, back in the 2010s, he would have stopped that shot, no problem. Basically, if this was 2014 and Neuer was in goal, and someone was coming up right at him, I wouldn't be worried. But, it's 2026.
Yeah.
So now he's in his 40s, and I'm just going, and if I'm holding a beverage, I'm like, okay, here they come. But if Hoffmann was in goal, I think that it would have been shut out. But, well, that's, it's over. You can't get too mad about it. But Germans can always find a way to complain about something.
It's the same thing that we were talking about with Team USA and Paraguay, where they took out Christian Pulisic heading into the second half. Like, there's this kind of consciousness. It's not just, of course, from my opinion, it's not solely the idea of, well, we don't want to ruin another team's experience in the World Cup, which I don't think that was a thought that came into Team USA's mind. But in terms of Germany, that certainly did. But it's also like, normally it's one of those things of like, oh, if it's an outdoor stadium and it's extremely hot, then yeah, you want to make sure your stars are rested. But obviously, Houston Stadium is indoors and it's got a roof over it, so you had it climate controlled on that. But yeah, I agree. I think it was definitely one of those where you're thinking about the other group stages. At that point, they didn't know about Ecuador and what they would be going into heading into that future match. Same with Ivory Coast. There was not an awareness of how good is this team going to be? What are we going to be situation with? How much are they going to be crushed on their spirits in a way? And one thing on Manuel Neuer, you're right about that. Not just potentially late on the reaction. 2014, he's not allowing. You would be hard pressed to find a time in a World Cup, unless it's against a really stellar offensive player like Lionel Messi, where he doesn't have a clean sheet, like especially on those high international settings. But the fact that there were 8 attempts on goal from Curaçao, 2 of them were on target, and there's one goal from that, that is a horrible ratio. Now, again, I think the big factor, the only reason we're being so critical about this is because it came in the 21st minute. And it was an equalizer to try and change the pendulum, swing it towards the favor of Curaçao. And that's where shades started coming in of the previous two World Cup editions you were talking about, Kai, where there was underestimating their first opponent and not taking that first step seriously. So again, it's you're right. What's done is done. Germany's got the 3 points. Curaçao has 0 to start out. But this is what Drew and I were talking about in the preview episode before this match happened. I said verbatim, if Curaçao scores 1 goal, that is their victory. And they've got it done, and they've gotten that history that's gone in there from Lefano, make sure I come in and see that is their victory. That is their win in that matchup, because if their first match was against Ivory Coast or was against Ecuador, I mean, with the way Ivory Coast just beat Ecuador, I mean, maybe they would have won them for the first match to kind of shock them on that and really build the momentum there, I suppose. But I think what both of you guys have said is just pretty much on the money with that. I think it's expected victory for Germany. Makes sense that it's gone there, but there's a lot of stuff to improve going forward, especially if it's a clean sheet, then maybe I'm not as critical of it. But, that's also the cynic goalkeeper in me from my days of like, it's not a clean sheet, man. That's just me.
I think
you'd be very welcome in Germany.
Perfect.
I think Germany. I think Germany handled the game. I think Germany handled the game perfectly. To be honest with you, yeah, they factored in the other groups, but they also didn't play at a pace that they needed to play to win the game, and that's how it should have been. Germany didn't need to go full strength to beat a team like Curaçao. There's other top teams that have faced much weaker nations that needed to go full strength, and we're going to preview that game a little bit later. I think most of y'all would know what I'm talking about, but the Manuel Neuer situation is a really tough one for Germany because obviously he is a legend, and he's one of those guys like we talked about in the 2014 World Cup. There wasn't anything getting past him. Manuel Neuer was a brick wall back there, and so it really is tough because you want to put him out there for his name's sake, but he is 41. He is aging. Very similar situation right now in Portugal with Cristiano Ronaldo. So it's a very tough situation for the management to be in. But I think as the World Cup progresses, I think we're going to get more clarity on that situation, to be honest with you.
One thing I did want to ask you about, Kai, because we were talking about this heading into the tournament. I mean, Jamal Musiala was expected to be this sort of star for Germany, and obviously the Club World Cup. He hasn't really quite been the same on since that path, but he got a goal. Especially at the 47-minute, right out of the halftime break and such. Does he look back? I know we were mentioning they weren't going with a full foot on the gas pedal and making sure that they're going forward. So do you think he's back on form at this point with that goal?
I don't think he's at 100% quite yet, but still definitely deserves a spot on, not just on the roster, but definitely on the pitch. But there was a lot of questions about whether it was going to be Musiala or Undav. And for this first match, I think Nagelsmann was just thinking more, let's just get the goals and then we'll figure out what to do next. But the thing is, Undav has been phenomenal on the pitch for Germany. And even when he came on as a substitute, I think it was 1 goal and 2 assists. Like when he came on in the second half, he was phenomenal. He's absolutely earned his stripes. He's earned his spot on the pitch. And I think you're going to see a lot more of him over the next group stage matches because he just cannot stop scoring. He's just really come into his own over the last couple of years, especially wearing the Germany kit. He's just unstoppable. He's just in the right spot at the right time to get the right shot. And even that goal that he scored, it wasn't even at full power. He took it off his shin, and it went in, and there was just nothing that Curaçao could do about it. And he's going to be probably the biggest name up front for Germany as we go further on in this tournament.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, it's very typical as media to be critical on these kind of things and focus a little bit more and harping on the minutia of this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a 7-1 victory for a team that won the World Cup 12 years ago. And yes, it's a different roster for the most part. Obviously, we have a 41-year-old goaltender that's in between the pipes that was a part of that, who, by the way, also won the Golden Glove during that World Cup tournament. So my hope is that he is not as slow on his reactions as that one goal that got past him, because then Germany's going to have some problems, or they're going to have to look to Oliver Baumann, or they'll have to look to Alexander Nubel. Like, they'll have to look and start thinking about those sort of things and make the decision from there. But anyways, all that stuff said and done, it's I don't know. You got any final thoughts on this? I feel like we've been harping on this old German national team, even though they won by 6 goals for like 20 minutes now.
Well, like Germans can always find something to improve on, to put it politely. They can, like, when Real Madrid won a few years ago, when they won Champions League, there was a German reporter who went up to Toni Kroos, like, right after the game, like, literally, final whistle, like 60 seconds after the final whistle, comes up and talks to Kroos and just goes, "So, congratulations on winning, but there were a few issues in the game. What do you think about that?" And he just went, "You must be German, right? Because you just came up with that question. I just won, and you're here criticizing us. What's going on here?" I mean, and Kroos is German, so he had to expect something like that coming from a German reporter, but still, it's like, so you can always find things to improve on when it comes to Germany. Like, there's no problem, for, criticizing Germany even when they win 7-1.
That's a good mindset to have, though. Like, I would love, I mean, you never satisfied. I think that's what, how programs are built, and, how you win is, you're never satisfied. You don't take the highs too high and don't take the lows too low. You just keep pushing. I love that.
Where'd you learn that from,
It's really annoying
Drew?
in the workplace sometimes. Let me just tell you that.
I was going to, what program you learned that from, Drew? Huh?
The University of Alabama.
Yeah, very, very, very obvious on that one. Well, as we mentioned, Germany and Ivory Coast collide in Toronto on the 20th for match 2 of the group play, and then the other side of the group, Ecuador and Curaçao, collide in Kansas City as they take a couple of days to regroup and reset. Kai, thank you for joining us. I know you can't stick around for much longer, but we'll have to do this again sometime when hopefully Germany wins by 12-2 so that we can criticize them even more.
We'll see. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Good to see you, Kai.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, that gets us along to the next matches. You're stuck with me, Drew, believe it or not, as we move along in the next sort of matches along these things. And we go to match number 11 on the score sheet between the Netherlands and Japan. And this is where, okay, so here's what we're going to start with. We're getting into all the matches here today from when we're recording this, by the way, which is June 15th. And so the nickname for this episode is Drew's Draw Day Despair. I changed it. It was just actually it wasn't despair. It's one of the words.
It wasn't despair. I forgot what it was. It wasn't despair though.
Drew's Draw Day Displeasure was the first nickname I had, and then I changed it to Drew's Draw Day Disgust, and now we use despair because we're using all these words because the amount of okay, here's the stat I'm going to throw out for you as we go into this. We have played 16 matches of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. 50%, 8 of them have ended in a draw. Wow. And 5 of those have been 1-1 draws, 2 of them 2-2, 1 of them was 0-0. And we are halfway, half of the matches in the opening 16, which you can look at it one of two ways. Like, I think it shows with this expanded field that not only can the teams that normally wouldn't qualify, they can compete, which is great. But if you're a casual soccer fan and not used to the idea of ties happening and slower paced, extremely heavy defense, not as many opportunities, then I could see you getting really frustrated and wondering
For
why do
sure.
people enjoy this sport.
For
I
sure.
enjoy a good defensive heavy game. It means that I, as a goaltender, did not have to work as hard, but it's also one of those, if it's a tie on 1-1 or 2-2, that means, okay, well, there's a mixture of defense and the goaltender's not, saving stuff. But the draws began with Netherlands and Japan playing in Dallas for that opening match down in Texas. And my goodness, this is the first time I have seen this on a stat sheet, Drew. There were literally no notable match events in the first half. There was 3 minutes of additional time for basically the hydration break, but no cards, no substitutions, no goals, no assists, not even VAR on anything.
Yeah.
That is
No, the first half of this match was incredibly. I mean, again, like if you're one of those guys that likes a heavily defensive contest, you love it. Thankfully, though, this game was made in the second half. The second half carried this game. It was one of the best halves of soccer I've ever watched. And, just back and forth action from two really, really good teams. This kind of reminded me a little bit of that Brazil-Morocco group. I think the Netherlands and Japan they're two of the top 20 teams in the world. I think that they're easily the best two teams in their group, although Sweden had a very impressive result against Tunisia. We'll talk about later.
Yep.
But I just think that, this was just an unbelievable second half. Everybody playing well. Japan getting that late equalizer, making it 2-2. It was just amazing. By the way, for some reason, I don't know why, on your screen, is your face like moving?
I mean, yeah, I'm moving my face sometimes. But basically, I've got this. We're breaking the fourth wall here, which is great. But I've got this like little. If you notice, there's the light behind me as my skull covers it. It does that. So that's part of why I'm purposely moving it to try and make this better. But I just, with conversation, I keep moving and flexing around and such. So.
Well, for some reason, you're frozen on my screen.
Oh well, hopefully the video is still functioning right.
The video, I can hear you. Like, the audio is still great. Oh, there we go. Boom. You did it. Whatever you just did, it worked.
Sometimes
Perfect.
on the connection side, but you see, this is a World Cup podcast, but we're comfortable enough breaking the fourth wall because all of us are completely fine with it. So, but to get back on track, yes, we talked about this with not just Korea, but Japan heading into this World Cup. And in previous editions of the World Cup, there is a lot of pride in soccer over in Asia. There is a tremendous amount of pride, especially with these two particular national teams. I remember seeing I remember seeing that another tradition that's very common with the Japanese team, or I think I've seen it with the Korea Republic team a couple of times. That locker room is spotless when they leave, and they show a sign of respect, which is great. And they also showed respect to the Netherlands in terms of taking them seriously, because it only took 6 minutes out of the locker room for Virgil van Dijk to score the opening goal of the game, and then Keanu Nakamura able to get a goal 6 minutes later, by the way. So we were on pace to having a goal every 6 minutes and continuing on that fluctuation. Somerville with the goal in the 64th minute. I mean, bunch of substitutions that were being swapped out. And then, as you mentioned, it got down to that goal before stoppage time got added on from Daichi Kamada. And, man, this is the kind of stuff that you enjoy. As you mentioned it perfectly, in that the second half made the game. And not only that, a defensive-heavy competition. Both of these teams only had 10 attempts on goal. Now, the Netherlands led on the on target side 6-3, but still, both these teams, because of how good those back lines were, there were only a total of 20 shots on goal throughout the entire competition, which just shows you how evenly matched these two were.
Yeah, we knew of that going in too, because these are obviously the Netherlands have an unbelievable defense. Virgil van Dijk back there is so
Yeah.
solid, and he actually ended up being the first goal scorer of the game with an unbelievable header. He's so dangerous in those areas because, not to mention, he's above 6 feet tall, but a lot of this Netherlands team is above 6 feet, and
Mhm.
Japan is one of the smaller teams in the tournament. So how they got a equalizer in the 88th minute on a header from a corner
Yeah.
blows my mind. But no, these two teams are very good defensively, especially the Netherlands. It just goes to show you that even defensive games can end up having a few goals here and there. But this was just a really was a unbelievable game. One of the best of the first round so far.
Yeah, absolutely great match to watch, especially the fans that were in Dallas were treated to a great competition.
Absolutely.
I'm sure a lot of them, when they went to the concession stand at halftime, were starting to think we need a couple more drinks in the system to make this
Oh,
entertaining.
for sure.
Responsibly, by the way. But then they hopefully they were able to enjoy the second half, and hopefully people didn't give up on the game. That's one of the things they teach us in sports media: don't give up on the game. We
You,
certainly didn't, for those of
you
us that
never
were
know.
watching it. But it is at least both teams escape with at least 1 point on this draw. And like I mentioned, with 8 out of 60 matches, this was the one match that has ended 2-2. Well, actually, that has changed, but we'll get into that a little bit on the later matches. But the Netherlands and Sweden face off in Houston on the 20th for Group F, and Tunisia and Japan will face off at Estadio Monterrey down in Mexico. All right, next we move along. This is one of those consequential matches. Says Monterrey Stadium had about 51,000 people in attendance on this one, and they saw a beatdown of Sweden on Tunisia. Its final score of 5-1, a game where Tunisia controlled the ball 52% of the time, but yet only were able to generate 6 attempts on goal, with 2 of those on target. I can't speak today. And the fouls against metric 10-8 in favor of Sweden. Not really that much that Tunisia was generating, and the big storyline coming out of this, certainly, Drew, is that their manager Sabri Lamochi got fired after this matchup. And that's why I was alluding to it earlier in what I was mentioning, of that the World Cup, especially in the early phases of the group, there is a lot of a microscope put on you as a manager. Some teams have the common courtesy to wait until the end of the tournament to make those decisions, but it's pretty obvious that Tunisia's national soccer organization felt the need to make a change immediately, and that they weren't going anywhere after this devastating loss down in Mexico.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. Like I didn't expect it to happen. Like you said, a common courtesy thing would have been to wait until the tournament is over. At least finish out the group stage. Don't want to cause any distractions with your team. You're already in a -4 goal difference hole right now. And you add this to them, puts a lot of weight and pressure on the players. As far as the game went, I think Sweden was just really good with their chances. I think Tunisia actually did create a little bit. They just kind of had the ball a lot. They didn't really have many chances forward. I thought they messed up a few times at the back. They got a little careless. Execution in their third wasn't great, allowed Sweden to pounce on that. And like I said, Sweden was just very efficient with their chances and dominant, really dominant from start to finish. I know Tunisia equalized, made it 1-1, but Sweden really took it to another level in that second half. And you got to feel proud of yourself when you come away with a win like that and the other team fires their head coach. So.
Yeah, and I mean it was a 2-1 game at the end of the first half. So I mean, even with the chances on that side, but getting shut out in the second half 3-0, that's where it got really just difficult on that, man. It's and again, it's one of those where you have to be careful. I know we were talking about this earlier with the manager's side after the Germany matchup, but it's you got to be careful in those things. And I think the biggest thing, there's a lot of talk around some of these matches where they've ended in draws, and we'll get into it a little bit, where some of the managers have been asked about their substitution decisions, and several of them have taken responsibility. Several of them have said, we have trust in our subs to do the right thing. But I think what probably made the impact on Sabri to get canned was his substitutions. I mean, he brought in 3 subs at the 72-minute mark, and then 12 minutes later used his final 2 substitutions, and it didn't make any difference. The adjustments did not really, they didn't make an impact on that aspect. So it's I think that probably made a huge factor into it. But I mean, like you said, it's tough, especially when you have the opposition. Sometimes they just get better chances. Sometimes they have better opposition. I mean, we talked about this with Ecuador. Like, they had several shots that hit the posts, and they could have easily been really dominant in their opening game, and it would have been a different story. But I just, for Sweden, great win. Fantastic for their side, especially considering that they did not control the ball the majority of the game. Granted, by 4%, close on that. I mean, they did lead 13-7, or 13-6, I should say, on total attempts on goal. They led 7-2 on target, so they had a lot more of accuracy with their shots. But it's just one of those tough ones you take, especially in a group that, after we saw a tie between the Netherlands and Japan, is not going to be forgiving.
For sure. Yeah, this was huge for Sweden. I think after they got their 3rd goal, Tunisia kind of felt a little deflated, and I think, though, that kind of bled into Sweden getting their 4th and their 5th. But absolutely huge. Both of these teams knew what was at stake after the Netherlands and Japan had drew, a point apiece, because the winner of this game was going to, be top of the group. And it always feels good, even though Sweden will most likely not stay there. It still sets the tone early. You got a +4 goal difference already. So that's a huge step. And like we've talked about this entire, World Cup and podcast, is 8 out of the 12 teams get 3. So Sweden is well on their way to the advancing to the round of 32.
Like we mentioned, Group F will have their second game of group play on the 20th, as Netherlands will face off against Sweden in Houston. And down in Stadio Monterrey, Tunisia and Japan will face off, but Tunisia will have a different interim manager at the helm. Okay, first match that we're recapping, match 13 here on June 15th. We get into ties galore here, Drew. You ready? You excited to talk about a bunch of these ties?
Some of them were unbelievably crazy, though.
Maybe it's this one. We'll find out in a moment. So Saudi Arabia and Uruguay got underway from Miami in the hot, sweaty, muggy heat. Which actually, it's interesting aspect of it. There are some media members talking about how it's starting to get a little rough in some of the forecasts around the nation, and the United States has a general rule about lightning delays. Miami could potentially be the first one to do that in the next couple of days. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Just looking at I casually look at the weather forecast and this stuff, because someone said, "Hey, what happens if it rains or has a thunderstorm or anything?" But that's besides the point. Saudi Arabia or Uruguay, a 1-1 score at the end of the match. First half, no action on the card side or even the substitution side, nothing like that, until minute 41, where Alamiri Abduela, again, I'm probably butchering these names here. My apologies to Rowan, my fantastic colleague over in Saudi Arabia there, but Abdulela scored in the 41st minute and then got a yellow card 3 minutes later. So I know the scoreboard says 1-0. I'm going to say that cancels it out there, buddy.
Yeah,
you got to make sure you don't get a silly yellow card, especially that soon. And then Maxi Araujo at the 80-minute mark got the equalizer, and from there you had several substitutions, which this is one of the more weird things. I know we had that 1-1 tie, and we'll get into those details, Drew, but 90 plus 2 minutes Saudi Arabia subs in three players on the final substitutions. I can't think of I can think of that at a high school level where you're substituting in your seniors for their final minutes or a final playoff game where you're in a one-sided competition. But when you're in extra time where the total additional time was 8 minutes, so you got 6 minutes left to play and you just rotate all of your subs and everything, I guess you want a final push to try and get those 3 points instead of one, but that just seemed odd to me.
I think that I know exactly why they did it. I just don't know why they took so long to do it. Saudi Arabia had their backs against the wall for 80% of that second half, especially towards the probably I would say the 70th minute mark on. I mean, Uruguay was peppering them with shots. I mean, Saudi Arabia's keeper had a really impressive game, and they had their backs against the wall, and they looked physically exhausted by that time that 85th minute rolled around. So again, I don't know why those 3 subs were so late. I think they did it simply to get fresh legs on to prevent Uruguay from scoring another goal and winning the game, because Saudi Arabia did exactly what they needed to do. I think Uruguay is the second best team in this group, although we saw what happened in the other game. I think they're the second best team in this group, and I think Saudi Arabia understood that, and they knew that they could maybe get a result against Cape Verde, and they did what they were supposed to do against a really powerful team in Uruguay. And it's, by the way, have to point this out, it's so weird seeing Uruguay play without Luis Suarez and Edison Cavani.
Yes.
I mean, they're just legends in Uruguay, and it's weird seeing them not there, but it's a lot younger of a Uruguay side than in past years. So, you know, they got some learning to do. They got some hurdles to climb, but they were all over Saudi Arabia today. Honestly, it should have probably gone their way, but props to Saudi Arabia for clinching a draw.
29-7 on attempts on goal in total, 11-3 on target in favor of Uruguay. And not only that, 67% in favor of Uruguay on ball possession. You could not be more true about that. Add this, set pieces, corners, 14-4. That you are not going to win a group stage match like that, Saudi Arabia. You cannot, and I'm sure that this is going to be discussed in the film study and things, because you do what you can. Sometimes the corner stat is deceiving, because sometimes it's just easier for you to kick it out on the back line and make sure you prevent a chance of the wingers or the forwards from trying to just dart it on the net. But this is I just see this, and when you mentioned about Uruguay being dominant on that regard, I couldn't agree more. It's just, and I also agree in that's the only thing that, they needed to try and find some way to mix things up. But again, waiting until the 92nd minute to make those 3 substitutions, you could have pulled that way easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially when they're getting dominant. Maybe if they do that around the 72nd minute or around that before, maybe that equalizer goal doesn't get scored. Maybe they actually get a chance to change those things up. But I mean, again, huge props to Saudi Arabia, because especially in a group that, grand scheme of things, yes, Spain is in it. Going into the tournament, heavy favorites to win the entire FIFA World Cup for this year. And obviously, the change with Cape Verde and Spain and that result, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's still one of those where you got to get points where you can get them, especially in this very lopsided Group H, I might add, because it's still 16 versus 61. That's literally, their ranks are the inverse if you swap the numbers around. And the fact that this went to a 1-1 draw, especially in Miami, it's, crazy stuff. Not as crazy as the other match, I would say, but still crazy stuff. Any final thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, the group is now sort of wide open. I mean, obviously, it's hard to just rule Spain out of winning the group. I still think Spain is just so, and obviously they rested their 2 best players up until about the 70th minute, which I didn't think they would need to bring them in for Cape Verde, but I was wrong, and we'll talk about that game later. But now this group's wide open. It's a very interesting finish now between everybody, because you still got to factor in that Saudi Arabia Cape Verde game and the Spain Uruguay game. It's gonna be really interesting to see how this group plays out. Also,
Yep.
if you could do what you did last time with the camera. It's frozen. It's been frozen for like 5 minutes. I was gonna say something, but
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is people can just hear what's being talked
people
about.
can
That's
hear
the-
you. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's I don't know if it's just maybe alt tabbing out of it or something while I'm looking at the notes or stuff, but I'm back in it now. Maybe that works, or maybe it's just the Wi-Fi is not as consistent here. But you work through it, you roll through the punches. But anyways,
Totally.
Saudi Arabia Uruguay ended in a 1-1 draw. Uruguay faces off against Cabo Verde, or Cape Verde as we call it here in the States, in Miami on the 21st. And then Spain, Saudi Arabia in Atlanta. That's a match I'm going to be on site for, which will be really fun. First time at Mercedes, known as Atlanta Stadium through this tournament. That'll be my first time there, and I'm excited for that.
Wow.
I'm sure you've been there a couple of times for either SEC
Oh, yeah.
championships or other matches or things. So,
And even
I'm ready
concerts,
for-
even a few concerts too.
yeah, that's right. It's a multi-venue sort of thing. I'm just ready for the fan-friendly pricing on food, because
And
these
you want me to
last
make
couple
you-
of days
You
have.
want me to make you jealous? You want me to make you jealous real quick? You know who's? I know
course.
this is so off topic, but you know whose concert I went to in Atlanta? The
Was that it?
Weeknd.
I mean, I'm not that jealous because I got to see him. I mean, I've seen him in outdoor stadiums a couple of times.
I just know he's
Yeah.
your favorite.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you this much: the amount of draws that have been in the last couple matches, it's taken my breath away. All right, like it's just. These guys are blinded by the lights or some regard. There's a
sure.
couple of able puns for you. Speaking of
Yeah.
which, what I would argue, speaking of Atlanta Stadium, and speaking of people being blinded by the lights, I don't. You got me down the pun path on
Sorry,
this stuff.
I shouldn't have done that.
Hey, I mean, that's what happens when your co-host is less than 0, right? I'm talking about me.
Another
I'm
one.
talking about me. So I'm not saying him. He's he's the real he's the real deal. Okay, in Atlanta, their debut match for this World Cup, they hosted Spain and Cabo Verde, or Cape Verde as it's known here in the or actually no, they have it listed as Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, whatever you want to you want to call it in this sort of thing, but 0-0. I tried to get one of our great colleagues, Isma Lopez, on the show. Shout out to you, my guy. But he's over in Spain, so you can imagine the time difference right now for him. But it's the sentiment that was expressed by him, and the young reporters chat that we had from Chile was a buzz with all these several matches of other national teams that their people were playing. I asked him, because I got on site to Seattle for Belgium, Egypt, which we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And I saw the score about 65 minutes in, and I message and say, "Hey, Isma, what's happened?" And he said, "This has just been a boring game." Well, he didn't really have that much else to say about it. Just said it was a very boring game. Not much stuff was happening. We had a bunch of substitutes that came in on both sides. We had, I think, we had 2 yellow cards the entire game. One in the first half by Cabo Verde. One in 90 plus 3 minutes for Spain. Which actually, here's one of your Nito Stato things. If I can just pull this up real quick. I saw it somewhere. Oh yeah. Despite Spain having 74% possession of the ball, Cape Verde committed just 1 foul the entire match. This is the least amount of fouls committed by a team on record in a World Cup match,
That's incredible.
which is amazing to think of, among the many things that are amazing to think of with Cape Verde in their first World Cup appearance. But look, heavy favorites to win the World Cup in Spain. We've been mentioning this throughout the entire podcast. I think this is a victory for Cape Verde, even though it goes as a tie and they have 1 point here. Like this, not only this is one of those that is shocked. Now, if they somehow managed to find one in the back of the net and they were beating Spain to give them 0 points out of this thing, the entirety of Spain would be up in arms,
Would
like
shut down.
completely just shut down and everything. But I think this is, and Kai mentioned it perfectly about the previous times with Germany of underestimating your open opponent. I think this is a textbook example of that, where Spain underestimated Cabo Verde.
Yeah, I mean, so much. I mean, you could look at this so many ways. First of all, Cabo Verde made their country proud at halftime.
Yes.
You know, the fact that they made it a half without, you were going toe to toe. It is your first time in the World Cup, and you're going toe to toe with who 60% of people think are going to win the whole tournament. Spain were heavy favorites to not even just come out of the group, to win the tournament, period. A lot of people think they are the best team in the tournament. And the fact that you came out in a game where you did not expect to even come close and draw is incredible. I mean, you have to give so much credit to this Cabo Verde team for fighting in there. They played they came in with a great game plan. They packed the box, pretty much had an answer for all of Spain's attacks. Yes, Spain was very, creative in their attacks, especially when they brought their young superstar Lamine Yamal on late in the 75th minute. But he comes on and immediately makes an impact, and they still had an answer for that too. This team just played with so much heart, and I really was so impressed watching. Now, obviously, Spain and this team plays 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, Spain is gonna win. But that's the beauty of the World Cup, is it's one game and you have everything to impress. As far as Spain's side goes, so much disappointment. So much disappointment. You were a heavy favorite to win the World Cup. You should have came out like Germany did. And the straight up fact is they didn't. They didn't even feel like they would need to bring their best 2 players on. And I didn't feel like they would need to either. Spain is much more talented than this Cabo Verde team. And they just couldn't find the chances, and they just couldn't execute in the final third like they should have. And again, a lot of that goes back to crediting Cabo Verde for just having such an unbelievable game plan going into this game. They made their nation so proud today. Like I said, even at halftime, their nation was proud. I saw that their goalkeeper, who, by the way, played unbelievable at the age of 40.
Yes.
He started the day with 20,000 followers on Instagram and now has up to 6 million, which is just amazing.
Yeah, and another neato stato, this was the 9th largest ranking difference ever for a men's FIFA World Cup matchup.
Wow.
With 2 versus 67. Look, sometimes I like to go on these little rants or these little sort of things. I think there's a hefty amount of this draw and disappointing loss on head coach Luis de la Fuente. And here's why. Well, first off, Lamine Yamal, the fact that there was a lot of momentum saying that he was not going to be available in the group phase for Spain, and the fact that he was able to at least make an appearance, okay, great. He made some impact off of the bench, but obviously not enough to get on the scoreboard and such. But this is the first time in the 17 appearances that Spain has made to the FIFA World Cup that there were 0 Real Madrid players on the roster. 0. So that is where this is where, when you especially have a storied club like Real Madrid and you do not choose at least one member of your Spain national team from there, that is where the issue comes, in my opinion, with head coach De La Fuente, because you assembled this roster, you built everything together to try and build the best of Spain, and your first match is a draw against a team in its first World Cup appearance that is
ranked 67th.
Yeah, it's ranked 67th. Now, I will say I have not listened to the post-game press conference with Coach De La Fuente, so I'm sure he was grilled about this. I'm sure there were a lot of questions about that and why this team was not able to get the job done. But I couldn't agree more. This is just and I think part of it as well is that Spain had an easy path to get into the World Cup on their qualifiers. And I mean, even then, you saw a little bit of weakness. You saw 1 draw and 5 wins. They had 2 conceded goals in there. But I just, ever since 2010, they've lost in the round of 16 twice. So they just have not. They just have not been able to get back to what they, used to be. And I just think, again, heavy favorites to win, and first match you're going to not even score a goal. Like, I think if maybe we're talking about a 1-1 tie between these two teams, where it's just maybe it's a PK because of a stupid penalty by one of the defenders, and they just get benched. Okay, I got you. But this is nobody scoring in this one, and again, this is huge credit to a 40-year-old goalkeeper. That's even the worst part about it. Your strikers can't get one past a 40-year-old goaltender who's between the pipes, regardless of how tremendous
World Cup ever.
It is first World Cup ever. And again, this is not disrespecting the goaltender for Cape Verde. And just to make sure we actually name it, it's Vozina. That is. Oh yeah, that's right. We have several players on a lot of these rosters in the World Cup where they just have one name, and we're so accustomed to the first and last name stuff. It's a little sidebar. There's also Pedri and Gavi on Spain that just have their one names there. But Vozina, the fact that, again, a 40-year-old goaltender, this isn't disrespecting him. He played great. He played lights out. He did everything that was expected of his team, his coach, and his nation to a certain extent. Spain, what are we doing?
It's all of my, everybody that I'm friends with, that we all have this big World Cup group chat, it was more alive than this game than any other game. I think, the nation of Spain and their entire fan base, they're disappointed, and rightfully so. And the players know this. I think the biggest thing right now for Spain is, how do they respond? I think there's obviously no time to panic. I mean, Spain lost their first game in the 2010 World Cup and ended up winning the whole thing. Now, it wasn't to a team of Cape Verde's ranking. However, there is no time to panic. They still have 2 more really important games in this group with Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. And I think it's really important for them to just remain calm, realize the team that they are. Maybe, you start Lamine Yamal next game, or bring him on a little earlier. I actually do believe if they would have brought Yamal on slightly earlier in that second half, things could have been a little bit different. He's just that much of a playmaker and that much of a difference maker and an impact. So, but again, got to give credit to Cape Verde.
Shout out to our first guest and one of our great colleagues, ETN, because he did the one hope that Spain has to cling on to right now. Spain did not score in the first match of the 2010 FIFA World Cup, and they were also in Group H in the 2010 edition of the tournament. So that is the only sort of superstition solace that's going on here, but it's that's it. And to quote Isma, when he said, literally, he was asked verbatim what happened with the 0-0. It had no sense. Very bad game. I couldn't agree more. We've said all this stuff. It was just, but regardless, we've got some other matches to go on to, and we're not going to harp any more than we already have in this circumstance. But Spain, Saudi Arabia, as we mentioned, in Atlanta for those teams' second match of Group H, and the other side plays in Miami for Uruguay and Cabo Verde. All right, we got 2 more on the docket here, and what do you know? We got another tie here, Drew. The disappointment, despair, disgust, whatever words we want to use with it. Oh, the 70,108 people who were in attendance in Los Angeles were, they got to see goals. They got to see some scoring on this. And actually, I did catch the majority of this competition between Iran and New Zealand, and it was an entertaining match. I'll give it
thriller.
that.
It was a thrilling game. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of fans actually, kind of look at this game. A lot of soccer fans kind of look at this game and be like, Iran, New Zealand, probably not going to be that much. But it was and that's why I love when teams like that play. New Zealand actually ranked the lowest in terms of the entire, every team in this World Cup. They're ranked like 85th,
Yeah.
which is the worst in the World Cup, and Iran 20th. But New Zealand came out with a passion, and I loved watching them play. They got an early goal there. I love Chris Wood, their striker.
Yeah.
His touch today was phenomenal. He set up both goals that New Zealand scored, and I loved that Iran was able to bounce back in both times they were trailing. They trailed 1-0. They equalized. Halftime, New Zealand scores 2-1. Iran gets one back with a beautiful header, and I believe around the 60th minute or so. But yeah, just a great game. It was a really entertaining game. It really was, and a game that I didn't really see going that way, but it did. It was great.
Yeah, I will say there better be a lot. Elijah Justma should not be paying for dinner tonight. The fact that he was the one that scored the only 2 goals for New Zealand in this match and was the one to get in those situations. Not only that, Chris Wood better not be paying for dinner tonight either. He had assists on both of those things. And you could see the desperation for New Zealand in that they were trying to win. They still haven't won a game at the FIFA World Cup in the times they've been there. And they came really close. Not in a sense, they legitimately came close, and there was more of a gap in the first goals that were scored. It was at the 7-minute mark, and then the equalizer at 32, and then Justin Woods at 54 for that score, and then Mohamed Wahebi at 64 was able to get that second goal. And I mean, not only that, but you think about the grand scheme of things. And another thing I will mention in terms of like the statistic side of these, kind of even on the ball possession, 52-48 in favor of New Zealand. Around the same on attempts on goal. Iran led 17-4 on overall, 8-4 New Zealand on the on target goals. Actually, Iran had 4-1 on corners as well, so a little lower on the set piece side of things, but we're certainly not immune to the way the world is right now. On Sunday, actually, or yesterday from when we're recording this, because it's Monday, I wonder how much of a factor in this. We know there's political turmoil that was going on with Iran, and we know there was a big war that was going on and such. And we even one of the things, if the initial plan was to do a preview of each of the groups and talk about these sort of things, but this, the main focus that most of the media was talking about going into this tournament was the political turmoil going on with Iran, and how is this going to affect play, like especially with the hefty amount of issues they've had in trying to get into the United States and making sure their visas are taken care of and everything surrounding that factor. The eve of their opening match just so happened that a peace treaty was struck by President Trump with Iran on a ceasefire. So hopefully that alleviated some of the weight off of the shoulders of this national team to not necessarily be the sole reason of joy for their fans back across the Atlantic. Way more than the Atlantic, a bit of landmass in between, but certainly you guys know what I'm talking about. But I think a draw in their opening match, I think it's great, especially when you think about how Iran, they didn't have any major issues in qualifying in this tournament. I mean, they lost to Qatar right after, and they've only been in the group stage in the times they've been in the FIFA World Cup. I think this is a win for Iran in just a multitude of different ways, and now hopefully they could put their full focus on what's on the pitch. Not saying they haven't done that, but at least the political side is now out of it in a way.
Yeah, I think I was, going into the World Cup, I was kind of curious about that because obviously, everybody knows that they've dealt with a lot of outside distractions, right?
Yes.
With this war. And a lot of people, I didn't really know how Iran would play. Would they play with an edge, with a chip on their shoulder, or would they, would that outside noise kind of affect their play on the field? Luckily, like we said, the ceasefire and everything ended up working out. I don't want to get, too political, but that was a big distraction for Iran. But now that it is over, I think they can focus on their play on the field. And I think they came out and played great. I think they played really well considering all things. I think the team has to from LA had to travel back to Mexico right after the game because they couldn't it's just a lot of stuff that they are dealing with. So I understand all that. I think they played a really good game today. And it's just like you said, I think they don't have to necessarily worry about the political side of things anymore.
Well, that's a draw for New Zealand and Iran, and Belgium will face off against Iran. I tell you, and that at least Iran doesn't have to travel that far because their next match is staying right in Los Angeles. New Zealand's got to travel a bit though, and so does Egypt not as far, but New Zealand's got to travel because they play their match on the 21st in Vancouver. So talk about time zone adjustments and everything on that side. So we got one more match to recap. This is the one I was on site for in Seattle, their debut in hosting World Cup matches in Belgium and Egypt. Before I get to the particular matchup, I want to make sure my tally is right on here. Group B, all the teams have 1 point. So Switzerland, Canada, Qatar, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, they all have 1 point. Group G all has 1 point. New Zealand, Iran, Belgium, Egypt. So that's 2. Group H all has 1 point. Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Cabo Verde. So we have 3 groups, and obviously groups I, J, K, and L get into their action in the next couple of days. But I wonder what was the last time, if there is any. This World Cup is already starting to make history in a lot of different ways, but I need to see if I could find somebody at either the FIFA stat department or somebody who is better at crunching numbers than me to ask, when was the last time that 3 groups in the FIFA World Cup have all had the opening matches in group play start in draws?
For sure.
Everyone having 1 point, because I mean, if there's any, here's the thing. I always shoot down people when they talk about the NFL is scripted, the NHL is scripted, like major sports leagues, because because I mean, in prominent examples, who in their right mind decides to write a script saying the New England Patriots are going to be as big a dynasty as they were, right?
Or
who scripts an 0-16 season for the Detroit Lions, or basically a 2-30 run, or 2-32 run over 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, or you said, the Kansas City Chiefs? Like, who does it? Who in their right mind, if you're making this as a fake thing for the FIFA World Cup, says, you know what, we need 12 teams to all draw their opening group stages. We need 12 teams with just 1 point. No chance. So this is push the conspiracy theorists to the side. But just wanted to get that Nito stato out of the way where we got 12 teams that are tied. Belgium, Egypt. Drew, you remember when I taught you not too long ago in sports announcing, and how I also any of the former students of mine who are in JCM 146 or Intro to Sport Communication, one of the lessons that is taught heavily in the United States at the journalism sports media level is no cheering in the press box. Well, that is not a thing in football.
Nice.
And here's why I say that. It got a little excessive in my opinion, and I'll get into that later because we actually need to talk about match stuff. But Belgium, Egypt, Egypt has not won a game at the World Cup. This is now their 3rd draw in the 8 matches that they played in total in their World Cup appearances. All the rest of their matches have been losses. So you can understand at times when people are frustrated and just wanting to get to that mountaintop. We were talking about it with these teams that have appeared in the World Cup for the first time and are making monumental strides, like first World Cup goal or first draw, anything like that. So when Ashur Imam scored in the 20th minute, that press box, you could hear a ton of people from the Egyptian press just cheering. Now, again, I'm monolingual. I don't understand Arabic, so I didn't know what was all being said on that stuff. But that it's one of the things of like, they say that music doesn't speak any language and it just transcends across borders and such. I mean, yes, when you have lyrics, obviously they have different languages, but in terms of like instruments and melodies and notes and stuff like that, it does not have a language. Passion like that does not have a language, and you could tell there's this sort of sparked hope. And not only that, that was an incredible shot from the top of the box at the it's not the half circle. I'm sorry, the
wonderful strike.
Shoot, dang it! I should know this. I'm a goaltender. Drew? Help me. What's the name of that half circle on the top of the penalty box?
Top of the.
There's. Hold on.
We used to call it top of the D.
Half circle, top of penalty box. The sad thing is, I just looked at the name of this. Shoot, come on, Google, help me out here. Now you see the penalty arc. That's the term I was looking for. It's the penalty arc, so that if they have to be a specific distance away. But anyway, so again, showing how great I am at the soccer side, ladies and gentlemen. Can't remember what the penalty arc is, right? I need more sleep. But the penalty arc, that's where he railed the shot. Like, I think
it was unbelievable.
There was the questions about Courtois going into the tournament, specifically with some of his other behavioral issues with other teams and such. I would have liked for him to jump just a little sooner because the ball grazed two of his fingers on his right hand. But man, there's just only so much you could do with a shot like that that's rocketed. He would have certainly stopped it if he had maybe jumped just a split second sooner.
Sooner, yeah.
But it would have probably been rebounded and darted on because there were other players around the area. But man, first goal scored by Egypt, you could understand why the Egyptian press was going crazy in Media Row.
Yeah, it was an incredible strike, and obviously the buildup was really good. I think the Egyptian king Mo Salah played a part in that lead up. I don't know if he actually got the assist, but he was definitely involved. He was definitely involved in the move for the buildup, and yeah, just unbelievable. I didn't know if he was going to take that shot because it was a very, like you said, top of the arc, but. Just a great strike. I know Courtois, and we all know how great of a keeper he is. I'm not taking anything away from the strike, though. It was an unbelievable strike, and it was just a great finish. And Egypt needed the first goal. I think it struck a little fear in Belgium, and it reminded Egypt that they're not the same team they were 4 years ago. They've got a lot more talent this come around.
I had to look back at the footage several times because I could have sworn Lukaku had scored the goal. It was an own goal by Hani Mohammed. But here's the thing. We know sometimes this is why you do not solely read stat sheets and you look at the film and you actually study this stuff, because I swear I wish I could go to the FIFA stat members and be like, look, yes, Mohammed, it hit off of his leg, but if Lukaku's not there, then the goal doesn't happen. Like,
it's not even just that. Like, it's also like Lukaku is, if any other Belgian player is there, it's not a goal. It's Lukaku.
Yes.
Like, Lukaku is such a big physical presence. That's what I agree with you completely.
And
that is
5
Lukaku's
minutes off of the bench too. Like, he's an amazing player, and they didn't start him in the starting 11. And yet, at 5 minutes in, he's able to not only just kind of generate that chance, or actually. I beg your pardon. That was 5 minutes later. There was a substitution on there, but he got substituted pretty much within 60 seconds of coming off the bench is when that happened.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. Like, I literally watched him get subbed on, and I remember thinking, like, oh, this is going to – because at that point, it was obviously 1-0, and I was like, okay, this is – everybody, every Belgian, every footballer knows how good Romelu Lukaku is. Even at his old age now, he's still got that big physical presence. He actually had a header later on in the game that was a reasonably decent look that he's probably mad at himself that he missed. But we all know how much of a danger he is. He comes on the pitch, and within, like you said, within 45 seconds, Belgium plays a really nice ball to the right wing. Right wing dribbles in, cuts across in, and yes, own goal. That goal does not happen if Lukaku's presence isn't there. So
well, I mean, more so the defense is seeing him charging after the ball. If he's not there or charging, they would just let that ball bounce around, or it gets picked up, or they're picked up by the keep, or they just let it bounce over to the sideline. So like that's where I again it. Yes, it is an own goal by the letter of the law, but dang it, FIFA, that should be a Lukaku goal. He should be credited for that off of the bench, because that is just incredible, and he deserves it. Not like he needs it because of the amount of accolades he's done for Team Belgium over the years, but you know, and you know, when you dig deeper on the stat side for this game too, even on the possession side, pretty much even on attempts on goal too, I was shocked when I read that it was 7-2 on corners in favor of Egypt. Like they had a lot more.
I was too.
They had a lot more set piece opportunities on that, and the fact
crazy.
that they weren't able to capitalize was just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, when I saw, I actually looked at that too, and it didn't, because I watched the whole game. It didn't feel like that it was that lopsided in terms of corners, but just gives credit to Egypt. Egypt really, you know, battled and hung in there, and Belgium's a team. Obviously, they're not at the golden age of Belgium that they used to have. You know, Eden Hazard is no longer there. You know, Belgium used to be a powerhouse. They're not quite there in terms of talent anymore, but still a great team with great history, and they're usually perform decently well in this World Cup. Egypt was out to prove a point, and I think they would have taken a draw at the beginning of the game. Egypt created enough chances to possibly put 2 in the back of the net. However, I think that they'll definitely be happy with the draw.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned it. No wins in the World Cup so far. They're still searching for that. I mean, I don't know, with the way Iran and New Zealand played against each other, I don't know how the Egypt's chances really favor against him on this. I mean, it's you know, we'll see. And I know that it technically was not credited on the assist, as we were talking about, but Salah Mohammed, he's got to step it up a little bit more. Definitely. I mean, I know, again, he got that scoring goal, or actually, did I look at that wrong? Yes, I did. Okay. Usually it's the other way, where they put goal and assist. So yeah, Mohamed Salah did get the assist on that metric.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he did make a difference on the pitch. Not trying to discredit you, Captain. Captain. Not like he cares that much, because he lets his work speak for himself. But
for sure.
But I will say, though, he did get substituted out in the 76th minute, and they had the captain swap out. When we were just talking about earlier, it's very weird when that happens, or where you have him rotated on that aspect. But yeah, I think it's still going to rest a lot on him in terms of going forward. Hopefully, Ashur Imam also is able to get another great opportunity like that going on the rest of the way. And Salah, with that, I will say, with that assist, he's also going into this tournament, he's close to having the most international goals in Egypt history. He's getting up there on that metric, so hopefully he starts scoring a little bit more to just see that kind of history unfold in what could be one of his final times playing in the World Cup. But you know, last note on that, I will say Belgium media also found it pretty cool when that goal scored, because again, all of them thought it was Lukaku who scored until they saw the stat line on that. Because again, from our vantage point, it looked like it was perfectly positioned in front of him, and he just kind of tapped it in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I was watching the game. I thought it was Lukaku that scored, and I was like, oh my gosh, he just came in 30 seconds later. He's already got a goal. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I go down to the press conference. I'm looking at the match report, and I'm like, there's no way that was an own goal. And I had to go back and see the additional angles and such. I'm like, man, should have probably been Lukaku on this stuff. Last thing I'll say on this before we get into our favorite portion of predictions is I just submitted an article for AIPS for this. Maybe it's published at the point of this episode coming out, maybe not. But but in the post-game press conference from Hassan Hussam, the head coach for Egypt, this is what I was alluding to earlier. I respect. Again, trained in the United States, they tell us no cheering in the press box. It's not the case in the international level. I get it. They're excited. They're cheering. There was a lot of the Egyptian media who was very much blowing smoke towards Coach Hassan. Specifically, there were not even questions. A lot of them were just going on about, Coach, you've done so much for this Egyptian national team. Thank you for all you've done for the nation and for us and we. And look, again, this is just from a journalistic integrity standpoint. Our job is to ask questions. We're not supposed to tell people what to think. We're supposed to tell them what to think about. And that's where I kind of had a little bit of a problem with too many people just giving a huge amount of praise to the head coach when it's a draw. Like, if it's maybe a blowout win to get their first win or so, I got you. I understand, but like, come on, guys. Like, we're not friends of them. We're not like, we're journalists. We're trying to tell stories and bring our coverage to the world and such. I think we need to be a little more, conscious of that. But having said that, Coach Hassan did mention in the post-game press conference, he said no one lacked any abilities today. And he did respond a little bit to some of the overblown compliments he was giving. And he said everyone back home knows that our national teams represent us very well, talking in terms of the men's and women's side. So there's a lot of pride there on the Egyptian side, even with the challenges they've had of not being able to get better than a draw finish through their World Cup appearances. And I can respect that, especially considering that one of those was an own goal on the defense side, even though, again, that wasn't an own goal. It was Lukaku. I am dying on that hill.
You might as well. I would too.
Yeah. The other thing I will say, the head coach, Rudy Garcia from Belgium, he mentioned the challenge of that. It's very hard to get back into a game down 1-0 as it gave Egypt confidence in their game plan. But I didn't feature this in my article. His first question, he was asked about, what do you think about hydration breaks, which has come up a lot in the conversations in the press conferences.
Sure.
He said, I don't think it's a hydration break. I think it's a coaching break. And like, that is, I think, one of the quotes of the tournament, I think, because yes, you have commercials that are starting to mix to do it with some of the networks, particularly Fox Sports on the full screen commercials and not showing the action and stuff like that. And especially when you have some of these stadiums that are indoors, not Seattle, and both coaches did mention that it was hot. It was not a temperature they were used to, and it was a bit of a challenge. So the hydration break helped. But I really like that quote from Coach Garcia in saying that it's more a coaching break. I saw you tilting your head a little bit, so I feel like you have some disagreements with it.
Well, okay, yes. So first of all, what I kind of agree with, I don't know if you saw an interview with the Netherlands captain Virgil van Dijk. He said that it should be game specific. And I get that FIFA wants every match to be equal, and so there's no complaints, and I understand that aspect of it. But on games where, like you said, stadiums are indoors, it's cool, there's no heat. Is it really a hydration break, or is it a tactical coaching? Because a lot of times, and we've seen this in a lot of group stage matches early, it kills momentum of certain teams.
Yes.
To have that hydration break. But at the end of the day, I think you gotta be consistent, and you gotta stick with it. So even on games where the weather isn't a factor, you still got to give that hydration break. And even if it's a tactical adjustment, that's just what teams are going to have to learn to change.
Yeah, and maybe it's maybe it's one of those situations where going down the stretch in future editions of the World Cup, because I'm interested when we get to 2030, where you have 6 different nations involved and all those stadiums have their mixture and such.
Crazy.
Does this continue? Do they continue to have this sort of break between the quarters? I'm sure they're going to experiment with it. Does it go to the Women's World Cup in Brazil? Does it continue to go to the other editions of their respective World Cups? Where does it go from there? I'd have to research more into the stadiums over in Saudi Arabia to know if those are indoor or outdoor. I would hope they're indoor, because if they're going to have that World Cup in the summer, they're probably going to have to move it to November and December like they did for Qatar 2022, because you don't want any major health issues or hydration issues. You're going to need a hydration break every 5 minutes if you have outdoor stadiums and it's in the summer over in that part of the world, which again is why they moved the 2022 tournament in that aspect. The very last thing, because time to get to predictions, but Coach Garcia did mention they were starting to get better and they kept losing the ball in the first half. He believes that Belgium and Egypt are the best teams in Group G, and he also stated that there is no doubt about it, we have to win against Iran for us to advance to the next round, which I think with the draw, it's because if you're in this case now where you're 1 point, the only way you're going to get the advantage is by at least getting the next win and such. But I found it interesting on the saying that Belgium and Egypt are the best teams in Group G, not just because of the stuff we talked about, but like the fact that a coach is confident enough to say that my team, it's one thing to have confidence in your team, but to say our opponent we just faced today, they're the other best team in the group. That I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it shows a lot of confidence in the group of men he's got out there competing, and I don't think he's wrong either. Like I really do. I think Belgium and Egypt are the best two in the group. So, it is bold to make that known, but I like the confidence.
If I had gotten a chance to ask a question among the many media members from Egypt who were there to ask Coach what his thoughts were on that, I would have. But that's sometimes where you let the home nation team kind of. I put my hand up and tried to get the question over there, but I also was sitting at the back of the room, so that didn't help either. So time to learn from that sort of thing. So New Zealand and Egypt face off in Vancouver on the 21st. Belgium and Iran face off in Los Angeles on that same date for the second day of Group G play. How many games are we going to predict our ties here, Drew? We got a couple of them to predict and such, but I think we might have to start doing that.
Might have to. To be honest, I don't have a lot of ties for these next predictions, to be honest with you. I really don't. So.
All right, well, let's get right into it. And by the way, a programming note, folks, the next couple of days we're going to be doing episodes of just recap 4, preview 4, because now the travel is settling down. I'm here in Seattle for the next couple of days before Team USA and Australia, so that helps. Once we get down into like the weekend and such, it's going to be a little more stressful on that part, but that's for us to worry about and not for you to worry about. So anyways, the predictions no one asked for, but we're going to give anyway. Groups I and J get underway for day 1 of their respective campaigns for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. All right, let's start with this match over in New York, New Jersey, between France and Senegal. My goodness, you've got the runner-up for the 2022 FIFA World Cup, champions in 2018 in Russia. They won 5 of 6 of their qualifiers. They tied 2-2 with Iceland. Somehow didn't make it to the tournament, by the way, especially with facing off against a good France team in that aspect. Kylian Mbappe has had 8 goals and 5 assists in those last 8 games of the qualifiers, so no chance that he's stopping at this point. Mikel Olise, 22 goals and 30 assists with Bayern Munich this season alone. And then you look on the other side for this Senegal team that it has not lost in the qualifiers at all. They did concede 3 goals, and Nicolas Jackson has the potential to be a great striker in there. But this is a Senegal team, Drew, that has been the most consistently one of the best AFCON World Cup teams throughout their history. And this 15 versus 3 match, it's a shame that several of these group matches. I say it's a shame. I get why the FIFA does it, in that they have to have some of these top tier matches earlier on or in the middle, so that it spaces out to have these primetime games, so they don't stack everything on at the end. Now, imagine how great it would be if we could have basically an NFL red zone of FIFA where we could have them going on at the same time, bouncing around. But anyways, 3 versus 15, France versus Senegal. I think this is going to be a good statement for France on their desire to go back to the World Cup final. I think they win this match, but I do think it will be close for about 75 minutes. I say 1-0. Maybe it's Mbappe who scores the first goal. You might have Olise who scores the first goal, but I think it ends up in a 2-0 win for Vive la France.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this group is one of the toughest, if not the most competitive, because, you have three teams in this group that are so solid in France, Norway, and Senegal. And, going into this game with France and Senegal, I think, I believe in France. They're, to me, the most talented team in this entire World Cup. The partnership of Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele is just one that I don't think Senegal will be able to handle. Senegal is a great team, a lot of respect for them. I actually do think they will score against France. I think it will go 1-0 to France. I think Senegal will equalize. And I actually have France getting two more for a final score of à la France, 3-1 against Senegal. And that is my prediction. I think it's a strong opening win. I think they, unlike Spain, come out. I think honestly, for the big teams like France, Argentina, Portugal, and England, I think that Spain game is actually going to influence their first match, because Spain is obviously one of the favorites as are them. And I think they kind of see that game and they're like, okay, we can't do that. We need to come out and set the tone. I think France will. I have them winning 3-1.
Sadio Mane, he scored 5 goals in the qualifiers. If he can get in the right opportunities and charge down the pitch, I agree. I think there's at least 1 goal from Senegal in this, but I stick with my prediction 2-0. I stand by that, but I think it's a difference of, can Sadio Mane get past his back line of France? That's the big question mark. I don't think he does in this opening match, but who knows? I could be proven wrong. I've been wrong before. We'll talk about our current record on the predictions once we get through these. But we continue along. The other two teams in Group I, Iraq and Norway, will collide here. Norway is interesting to me. They have not been back to the World Cup since 1998, where they went to the round of 16. They had a very convincing path with winning 8 of their qualifiers. I mean, Erling Haaland has got 1 goal in all 8 of those matches. So I think he is one of those players that if your star steps up and does what they're supposed to do, then it's fantastic. But if he gets shut down, then it's going to be a really rough time, especially when you have Martin Odegaard, who's been injured in several of the last segments down the stretch as well. But on the other side, Iraq, I wonder how much fatigue plays into this team. Not just, they're ranked 57 for a variety of different reasons, but also because they had to play the most games of any team in this FIFA World Cup to qualify as part of that intercontinental playoff. This is another team that also has not won at the World Cup ever in the participations that they've had. And another one of these teams like Iran, where they hope that war intentions that are going on right now, everyone's minds are able to be taken off of it because of this national team. And it's, Ayman Hussein is their main goal scorer. Hopefully he steps up on this side of things. I think Iraq maybe gets a draw or a win in this group stage. As much as I want to think it's against Norway, it's probably not going to happen. I think maybe Iraq has a win potentially against Senegal after Senegal gets beaten up by France going down the stretch. But I think Norway wins this one. I do think it is a closer matchup than people realize. Say 3-2. It'll probably be a little more higher scoring, but I don't think it ends up favorably for Iraq.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think that Norway is a team they're, to me, the most interesting team in this World Cup, because I feel like they're so boom or bust. I feel like they have talent, but like you said, they haven't been to the World Cup since 94. It's been a long time coming for them. 98, sorry. But obviously they're backed by Erling Haaland, who his goal to appearance ratio is unbelievable. I think he's got like 55 appearances and 50 goals or something crazy like that. As far as international appearances for Norway, it's just ridiculous. I love Martin Odegaard. He's always been one of my favorite players. This team is very good. I think Iraq is one of the weaker teams in the tournament and definitely the weakest in this group. I feel like Norway will have no problem tomorrow. I feel like Iraq will give them a little bit of a scare, but I feel like Norway will end up taking control of the game. I actually have them winning 4-1.
A little
And
more of a dominant victory, which
a little bit
again,
more of a dominant victory.
I think that could probably happen. It's very much. I just want to give Iraq some sort of benefit of the doubt. As long as if Ayman Hussein, if he's able to do great things here, then and there's something about. Especially with political tensions. We saw it with Iran. Like, even though it was alleviated within 24 hours beforehand, they were able to use that as motivation and fuel the fire to give them a good showing. Do you think Iraq, you like the thought of them potentially beating Senegal?
Is it fair for me to want to see? I want to see how Senegal plays against France before I say that. I will say that I think they can maybe get a draw. I do not think Iraq can beat Senegal. I think they can get a draw in that match. And I mean, I'm putting a lot of hype on Norway too. I'm 4-1 is a pretty bold prediction, but I do think they'll come out tomorrow and play great. But it's going to be this group is so just dynamic. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and that gets us to Group J. This is the Kansas City. So New York, New Jersey has already gotten underway on several things. So is Boston. We're talking about San Francisco as another match. I mean, Kansas City has continued to get in the swing. We have pretty much all of these stadiums are now hosting at least one match. And I think, let me make sure I'm not tripping here. I think this is Kansas City's first. It is. Okay, so I believe this is Kansas City's first match of the tournament, and this will also be I'm right. This is the final stadium that is having its opening match in the World Cup. All the other ones at this point have hosted at least one match, and what better place in the city of recent champions in the National Football League than to host the recent champions of the World Cup. And I know what you're thinking, Spencer. Then why is Philadelphia not hosting Argentina on this one? Multiple recent championships. Okay, I know the Eagles have had it at least in the span of a certain amount of years, but there's been more appearances in the Super Bowl, a couple more Super Bowl titles for the Chiefs and everything. Anyway, all that being said, Argentina begins its defense of its FIFA World Cup title against Algeria. Argentina, heading into this tournament, they were given the #1 ranking on the FIFA Coca-Cola rankings. They had 4 losses, but they cruised in the qualifiers. Drew, plus 21 goal differential in those matches. Plus 21.
Yeah, do you know how hard that is to do?
And 8 of those goals have come from Lionel Messi, which still the big question, I guess. The only thing, and again, there's a great article on The Athletic that breaks down all of these teams. I encourage you all to read it. A lot of great folks who did an in-depth study with all the teams, and there was the question with Argentina: does Messi and this Argentinian national team have the same motivation to win in 2026 as they did in 2022? Especially when you think about there was so much of a conversation that Lionel Messi was done. This is where he rides off into the sunset and never plays for the Argentinian national team again. And yet he obviously went to Inter Miami, CF, shortly after that World Cup. He's continuing to play on a star level. He won the MLS Cup with David Beckham's team. He has continued to be a huge impact star for them heading into qualifiers. And you just wonder how much of a motivation there is to, defend this title. I will say France didn't have that issue in 2022. They were fired up and wanting to continue to go down this trend. And the fact that they were only one penalty kick away from being back-to-back World Cup champions for the first time in like decades in the edition of the tournament is just unbelievable to think about. That's the one thing that separated Messi for a long time from everything else. He wanted to win the tournament, and he did. So you wonder if that's what the strength is on the motivation side for Argentina. On the other side, you got the 28th ranked team in Algeria that went 6-1-1 in their qualifiers. They qualify. They in 2014, they had their best finish in the round of 16. This Algeria team has Riyad Mahrez, their captain, who has the second most games for the Algeria national team and appearances, or caps as we call it in the game, at 113. And I think it's also kind of cool that Zidane, his son Luka, is a goalkeeper for the team too. And in those World Cup qualifiers as well, Mohamed Amora scored 10 goals, so something to look for him. I think Argentina gets... All right, here we go, Drew. It's time for upset alert. I think Argentina gets scared on this one. I think they maybe don't step up in the right way, but Algeria ultimately falls. I scared you there for a little bit. I had to make sure that there's no way I'm picking against Lionel Messi in the opening match.
Yeah.
Like it ain't happening. But I think I think Algeria does come out strong. I think they do put up a good fight, but I think Argentina wins this. I will say there's a fight, but there is no goal. I say 2-0 for Argentina in their opening match.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I had the same score. I had Argentina 2-0. We talked about earlier with Kai about, how Germany was after their 2014 World Cup victory and how hard it is for a team to not only repeat, but to just build off of what they did 4 years ago. For Argentina, they're about to have to face that challenge of trying to defend their title. Luckily for them, they have one of the most talented teams in the whole tournament. The way they move the ball up the field, the way they possess in the midfield is truly incredible. Obviously, that's all backed by their captain, their hero, at age 39, still doing it all, Lionel Messi. And a lot's going to be put on him. A lot of people thought that after that World Cup that he was so elusively after, he maybe would retire from international football, but he didn't. He's still here. He's still playing at an elite level too. I think Algeria is a good team. I actually think they're probably the second best team in this group. I actually think Argentina got a pretty favorable group. To be honest, and I think that they'll have no problem in this game. I think that Algeria will. I actually agreed pretty much identically with what you said. Algeria will kind of give them a scare a little bit, but end result, in my opinion, will be Argentina 2-0.
Yeah. The other thing I think about in this, you reminded me that he's 39. 2030, the World Cup has at least one match in his section of the woods. 2030. Can you imagine if he at 44 decides, you know what, the way I want to go out, regardless of a win or loss? Now, granted, Argentina has to qualify for the world. Well, they would automatically qualify because they're a host nation. So imagine if his way of going out is that I play a final World Cup game on my home soil, in a way, or being in that sort of home section. So you wonder if he's going to stick around for one more tournament, if he's still playing well, etc. Maybe it's one of those, he technically doesn't retire. He just has a jersey on. He starts and they immediately sub him out. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But we're witnessing greatness on that, and hopefully that trend continues. But we'll see how it goes. Final prediction in terms of this episode: Austria and Jordan playing out in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Austria had a goal with 13 minutes left against Bosnia in the qualifiers to help propel them to their first World Cup appearance since 1998. The change of the guard on the head coaching side has certainly changed this whole culture of this Austria team. Now The challenge is as well that David Alba, he was out with a knee injury in the Euros, and as their star captain, he really hasn't had as much activity, so hopefully he can make a difference here as he's starting to get back into the swing of things. Christoph Baumgartner is out with a thigh injury as well, so that's going to have an effect on this 24th ranked team. When you look at Jordan as well, yes, they're ranked 63. They started getting on a hot streak going into the second half of their qualifiers, including a draw with Korea, by the way, which is another team that it's hard for me to think that this, the Korea team is we're starting to get closer and closer to the second games of the group stages. We've seen him mention Korea a whole bunch, like every episode. We need to start having a counter for how many times we mention it. But for Jordan, this is their first World Cup appearance ever. They came really close in 2014, but just could not get past the hump. Musa Al-Tamari is, again, in terms of we talk about the attack and charging down, the counterattack is going to fall on Musa and making sure he can have stuff there. And Yazan Al-Naimat is still out with his ruptured ACL injury he had last year. So maybe he's recovered in time, but it's really hard to recover from those things. But just a fun note for you on this Jordan team. I want to see them score at least one goal because they are known for NFL-like celebrations on their goal scoring.
Amazing.
So that's one of those that'll be fun to watch. So just because Jordan has that, I'm going to say that this is a 2-1 game. Austria, even though it's 24 versus 63. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can see Drew is like, you stole my prediction, man. But
because I hate to keep saying like, well, it really was 2-1 was mine. So
I think this goes 2-1. I think Austria doesn't have an issue in terms of controlling the tempo. I think maybe I will say that this is an equalizer goal that is in the first half, and then Austria manages to find one. I know we don't really go focus on the time stuff. I'll say around the 70-minute mark, Austria scores and then just controls the game the rest of the way.
I'll switch up. I'll say that Austria gets their 2 first and makes its 2-0, and then Jordan with I would say probably in the 68th minute gets one back and puts a little bit of fear into Austria, but ultimately I do think Austria shouldn't have too much of an issue here. I think they'll be able to control the game, and this is a big 3 points for them because obviously what's waiting at the other side of the group, Argentina and Algeria, so huge game. This is a 3 points that are much needed for Austria, and I do believe they will get the 3 points.
It's amazing to think with Algeria being at 28 and Austria at 24. And I know it's fair to say once all of the groups have had their first group game, we could start talking about, okay, who's in the third place contention? Because it's just so early and there's a lot of unknowns on that stuff. But I do think in terms of Group J, it's probably just going to be 2 of them that are going on to the knockout stage. I mean, maybe if we get maybe a close game that's with Algeria and Austria, then maybe that makes a difference in terms of goal differential. But not to lead the cart before the horse in a way, but I do think that at least Group J, it's just going to be probably the top 2 teams going on to the elimination round. It seems like you agree on that, Drew.
I do. I absolutely agree on that.
Yep. And then hard to believe once we get through that, we only have 2 more groups that have to start out their first group stage thing. One more order of business so far in our predictions. And again, this is going to help that we're starting to do episodes per day for the next couple of days now, so we can actually predict more of this stuff. But I asked Drew to tally up the win-loss records that we have so far for our predictions going into the day, which could be completely destroyed after this day, or it could, actually, it won't be destroyed. We're confident. We know that we're decent at what we do. So, where are we at on predictions right now, Drew?
We are both dead even right now. We are both 3-3. We've predicted 3 games correct. We predicted 3 games wrong. The 3 games that I believe we both picked correct was USA, Paraguay.
Yep.
We had right. We had, I believe it was the Germany Curaçao game,
Yeah.
which that was a pretty easy one to predict. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves there. And then we also had the Sweden and Tunisia game. Correct. We both picked Sweden to win that game. So the three we missed out on was Netherlands, Japan. I had Netherlands 2-1. You had Japan 2-1. It ended up being a draw, which is pretty fair. I mean, that was pretty good results. Ivory Coast, Ecuador. You had Ecuador. I actually had that game being a draw. It ended up being an Ivory Coast win. And then the other game was Canada and Bosnia. We had Canada getting a win for their home stadium, and they ended up drawing that game. So 3-3.
We're 3-3, and of course, it's now 8 out of 16 matches are draws. We just can't get away from draws. Hopefully it happens after tomorrow, but if we go 2-2, then it's going to be a problem.
Very much.
Now, granted, we're on the same page with a couple of of these picks, but like if we go like 4-4 or something along those lines, then we got some problems. But
for sure,
it's just. Man, we can't get away from draws. It seems. And you notice notice we didn't pick any draws today because we don't need any more of those. We don't need any more 1-point groups where everybody is basically at 0-0. We don't need it.
Trying to steer away from that.
Oh, goodness. Longest episode we've had so far on the podcast. Appreciate those of you who listen in to us. Special thanks to Kai for joining us again as well. Really excited that we got to get him on. I'm sure we'll talk to him more as the tournament progresses. And got a couple colleagues we've invited for some of the other group stage matches tomorrow. So hopefully they're able to join us for some of these recaps and things. But yeah, felt like 2 hours just flew right by there, Drew, and excited for the World Cup to continue as we get into the final 2 days of the first games of group play before we get into the ever so enticing game twos where we start to get a deeper picture on we just start to get that whole deeper picture on the round of 32.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't that's when it really gets interesting because that's when groups are decided, seeding comes into play because a lot of these teams, finishing at the top of your group is so huge because you really want that weaker team in the round of 32. And you could possibly get for example, but in that group C, Brazil and Morocco, whoever finishes top, that could be the difference in you playing a team like Saudi Arabia or a team like Japan. There's a big difference there.
One final thing before we start doing our sign-off stuff. So there's a great system that we media folks have access to called the FIFA Data Platform, and it shows you not only scores in real time, it also shows you if-then situations in terms of the qualifiers. I am looking right now at the results, and obviously there's a lot of ties because there's several of these because there's two groups that have not started playing yet, or actually no, sorry, four, because there's the four groups that haven't played yet. But right now, in terms of factoring on the points, cards, that kind of thing, your third place teams, we have the top 5 decided. We have the Netherlands, Brazil, Belgium, Qatar, and Spain, just in that order right now. And that's, again, it goes by, they all have 1 point because of draws, but then it goes down to on the tiebreakers, it goes to discipline. So it's yellow cards and then red cards. So that tells you Spain got in trouble, but they're still in it. But you still got some of them in it. But in terms of the actual numbers and where they go to the knockout stage, that again, this is all speculative. This is all stuff of oh yeah, this is what it would look like right now, but it's nowhere near finalized on that because we still have teams that haven't played yet. But man, looking at that stuff, you think about Qatar at 4th on those third place rankings. That tie at Switzerland is looking really good right now.
For sure.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the NSMA 2026 FIFA World Cup podcast. Appreciate our guest, Kai Dombach, joining us, and we'll make sure we have some more guests for tomorrow. We'll have another episode tomorrow where we'll recap the 4 actions group stage games that we just predicted. We'll also preview the upcoming matches that will finalize day 1 of group play in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. For Drew Williamson, all the hardworking men and women that make this run so smoothly, I'm Spencer Thompson saying so long from various parts of the United States. We'll see you on another episode of the 2026 NSMA FIFA World Cup podcast.
Hey there, thank you so much for listening or watching the NSMA 2026 FIFA World Cup podcast. A special thank you to our Platinum Insiders, the Banzet family, Robert Eggleston and Jason Edmonds, for their support of the podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast and my journey to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the link is in the description. Not only are all donations potentially tax deductible, as the NSMA is a 501c3 nonprofit, but you also can get your name here on this graphic in the description, and you could get some exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Appreciate those of you who have donated so far, those who are going to donate, and hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast during the 2026 FIFA World Cup.